Today on Dr. Phil. Warren Jeffs' trial shocked the world.
You were, at least in part, Warren Jeffs' bodyguard. Did you know he was taking child brides?
Now the man who stood by him speaks out.
There were an awful lot of young girls walking around visibly pregnant.
Doctor, that sounds pretty sensational. Is it offensive for a 19-year-old to be pregnant in America? It's disingenuous to say that there is no such thing.
It's disingenuous for you to tell me that that is a 19-year-old girl.
Never even tried, did I?
I think you did.
No, that isn't the question, doctor. That is unexcusable.
So you want to take me to task? I'll take you to task right back, my friend. I think you're obfuscating here. I think you're just talking around in circles. Let's do it. If we're going to do something here that matters, then we got to deal with the truth.
Have a good show, everybody. Here we go.
If I can help get this family back on track, are you willing to do that?
Ready for you. Take.
This is going to be a changing day in your life. It's a story that has captured the nation. Warren Jeffs, the leader of the Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints, who was having sex with girls as young as 12 years old. He became a fugitive and landed on the FBI's most wanted list, along with Osama bin Laden. Jeffs was finally caught and convicted and is now spending the rest of his life in prison. Now, we've been following his so-called reign of terror for several years. It's a secret world of polygamy and alleged abuse going on right here in the U.S. in a town called Colorado City.
Warren Jeffs is the one that controls everybody. Everybody does what he says.
Most girls aren't able to read the hearts of men. That's why you turn to the prophet with your life.
Tell me why you would go back if you went back.
Because I'm scared.
You've been taught that if you leave the community, which you have, that you've traded your freedom for eternal burning in hell.
Well, but I'll be burned for eternity.
Using the guise of religion to cover up the child abuses and the child rapes, no.
I'm standing outside the towns of Hilldale and Colorado City. Places do not welcome outsiders. They're controversial towns filled with a lot of unanswered questions. Do you know Warren Jeffs?
I've met him. He is highly respected, highly loved.
They say that he is responsible for arranging marriages in a polygamous way with child brides.
Getting into personal areas I'm just not going to get into.
You heard the old saying that people who have nothing to hide, hide nothing?
I'm not hiding anything. I'm just not going to get into people's personal lives.
Trouble with the law in Utah and Arizona, Warren Jeffs resettled part of the sect in Texas.
Child Protective Services has now taken temporary legal custody of 401 children.
When the story broke about the El Dorado compound being raided, Naomi immediately reacted. She needed help tracking down some of her family that she believed was still inside this religious sect. She had had no contact since she left 16 years ago.
I am going to go down the road and approach the compound. I'm like nervous right now. It just feels so weird to be this close to something I spent so much time to get over. It's just so bizarre to see that my family is behind this gate and I can't cross it.
After being stonewalled at every turn, Naomi's desperate search finally brings her face to face with some family who she thinks may be brainwashed.
This is Ada Marie. This is my sister that I raised. I sure have missed you.
Good to see you.
I'm happy.
Texas Rangers found a bed inside the temple. On that bed, they found disturbed linens and female hair.
He had a revelation to this bed to be made very strong and that it needs to have a plastic sheet over it for what will take place on that bed, and that it has to be able to support his weight.
Evidence against Jeffs was seized during the police raid of the YFZ Ranch near El Dorado, Texas in 2008. The Texas Attorney General says Warren Jeffs is guilty of sexually assaulting 2 girls, one 14, the other just 12.
According to reporters who were in court today, another audio tape
played for the jury involved sex with children, and it was so graphic that jurors squirmed and wiped away tears.
The latest audio tape played to the jury captures Jeffs instructing 5 girls under age 16 to please him sexually.
But it was very disturbing and very disgusting to hear those things in a courtroom.
Jeffs is acting as his own attorney, but he never once addressed any of the charges or any of the evidence against him. Instead, he droned on for hours about history, religion, and salvation.
Justice has arrived for Warren Steed Jeffs, who we expect to spend the rest of his life in prison.
Jury members gave Jeffs the maximum sentence today.
Life in prison plus 20 years for sexually assaulting children.
If someone comes to this state and sexually assaults a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old, you're going to be found guilty, and you're going to be put behind bars.
Where the FLDS group goes from here is unclear.
Today we're going to take you behind the headlines. Questions: what will become of the women and children who were under Warren Jeffs' spell? These families have been torn from the man they believed was their savior. Now, they believe this, and so many of them are very likely to have feelings of hopelessness and confusion. They have only known one way of life, and they've been taught that if they have to leave the church, they will be damned to hell. Listen to the voices of some of the past members from the documentary called The Lost Boys of Polygamy.
I mean, all your life you get taught that if you do certain things, you're gonna go to hell no matter what, okay? And one of those things is leaving the church. That's the worst sin you can commit.
When you leave, then I guess there's like no hope for you. You just go to hell.
All of you are not going to survive the judgment.
If you question anything that the church leaders tell you to do, then they don't believe that you're a true follower, and they're going to either take measures to bring you in line or just simply kick you out.
Your family is told not to have any contact with them. It does take place on a limited basis, and they have to do it under the table. They have to sneak around. If they're caught, their families run the risk of being kicked out of their community and being alienated the same way the boys are.
The direction that, the people and the religion that I was part of was heading wasn't the direction I was going. So I had to vote with my feet and, move out.
They asked me to leave because I had a girlfriend. I was seeing her regularly.
I'm lost. Been gone for 6 months and I haven't even dared talk to a girl.
It's still pretty awkward for me to talk to girls, that kind of stuff, because we weren't allowed to.
I don't even know how to start. I'm 24 years old and no, I have never kissed a girl.
Well, the big question is, the burning question is, what will happen next? Private investigator Sam Brower has been following the FLDS for 7 years, and he helped crack the case that led to the arrest of Warren Jeffs. Let's take a look as Sam returned to Colorado City, also known as Short Creek, just shortly after the trial.
The minute you come into this town, you have a tail on you, just like we do now. This is their town, and they don't like strangers here. They're not police officers, but they're people who have been given a calling to watch over and protect the town. They call them the God Squad here. They're church security. They're assigned to intimidate and harass people. A statue of Warren Jeffs is being built and put together in San Angelo, Texas, and they're transporting it here to Short Creek. It's a 38-foot tall statue. The statue is of Warren Jeffs with a set of scriptures in one hand and holding the hand of a little girl in the other hand. It just illustrates just how messed up the people are here. They're not going to listen. They're not going to pay any attention to what happened in the trial, what happened to Warren Jeffs. They're not looking in the internet. They're not reading papers. They're not looking at the news. They've been commanded not to, and the really sad thing is they do whatever they're told. Coming up here on our right-hand side is
a mansion that cost around $10 million to put up and erect because Warren had told his followers that the prison walls would crumble and that he would never go to trial. Now, this big mansion is sitting here empty and Warren's in prison. Another one of his failed prophecies. This is the Hilldale Clinic coming up here. You'll notice that there's a guard standing out here. There's video cameras up all around the whole thing. They will not allow outsiders into that clinic. Right now, the church is starting to fracture a little bit. There's a power play going on. There's no real right of secession in the FLDS church. It's whoever's quickest on their feet. Now that Warren's in prison, Lyle Jeffs, Warren's brother, has been establishing himself as the prophet's mouthpiece here. And Willie Jessop was a bodyguard, not really a big player as far as being in the church hierarchy. He was just kind of the guy that went around and intimidated people. Warren thought he was having a little too much authority, and Warren got rid of him. Willie doesn't have much credibility with me. Not too long ago, all this stuff was okay with him, all these marriages, and now that he's kicked out of the church, it's not okay. Now Warren's a bad guy. And the fact is, there wouldn't be any victims if the mothers and fathers and people like Willie Jessop, had they not done those things.
Well, the man just mentioned in the tape, Willie Jessop, is here. He is the spokesman for FLDS and is rumored to be part of the new leadership. Now, Willie is going to join us next. I decided to talk to him alone first, although there are other guests here today. There are former members of the Sect and Sam Brower, the PI who's been investigating Warren Jeffs. They will watch my interview with Willie backstage, and later we'll get their reaction to my interview with Willie Jessop. I'm going to bring him out right after the break, but as I've said, although you may have strong feelings about Willie, about his involvement, about what's gone in this secret religious community, we need to respect that he is here and give him a chance to speak. I treat every guest with dignity and respect, and he is no exception. We'll be right back. Some people speculate that Willie Jessop may very well be one of the new leaders of the FLDS, or at least part of the new leadership. So please make welcome Willie Jessop. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Doctor.
Dr. Phil. Willie, how are you?
Doing good.
Have a seat if you would. I really appreciate you being here. Because we've been interested in FLDS for a good while. I've been to El Dorado, I've been to Colorado City. I've spent time in those communities. I've talked to people that have been there and now left from there. And with Warren Jeffs' trial and being convicted, a big question in my mind, and I think a lot of people in America, is what now? Tell me why you agreed to be here today. What do you hope comes out of this?
That the conduct of Mr. Jeffs is just so inexcusable, and it just, I've lived through watching a living part of probably the largest society or a people that has been victimized with more victims, probably in American history. I don't know anybody in America that has a trail of tears and carnage that's as wide and as terrible as that. And my humiliation is being a part of that.
Let's talk about your role, because you said you've been witness to and were there during so much of what took place. What was your role? I've been told that you were, at least in part, Warren Jeffs' bodyguard.
It was more of when he was in the public limelight or something, or a church service or something where you needed that, then yeah, that's the role I played.
Did you believe he was a prophet?
Absolutely. That's the humiliating part that it's just difficult to come to grips with. Is you're ingrained that it's part of you believe in Santa Claus. You believe he's a prophet before you even, and you got people who've never even met him that absolutely worship him, and he's been in prison for 5 years, and yeah.
Well, he's now been convicted of 2 felony counts of child sexual assault. He's been life in prison plus 20 years. Do the people there, even after what we saw in court, what we heard in court, everything that was offered into evidence, they still hold him in high esteem as a prophet?
Absolutely. You'd have to understand a little bit of the background of it. He had already been sentenced to a life sentence before he ever went to Texasville. He was charged. He was on America's Most Wanted, rated as one of their highest profile cases, only second to Osama bin Laden. Those cases were dropped and dismissed, which only memorialized his standing in our own society.
You were in it, you were close to it, you were involved, by your own words. Were you aware that he was having sex with teenage girls, 12 years old, 14 years old? Were you aware of the things that he's now been convicted of? How did people not say, wow, that girl is young and she's pregnant?
Is it offensive for a 19-year-old to be pregnant in America?
It's disingenuous for you to tell me that that is a 19-year-old girl. You were in it, you were close to it, you were involved, by your own words. Were you aware that he was having sex with teenage girls, 12 years old, 14 years old? Were you aware of the things that he's now been convicted of?
No, and when all this came out, your photos that are up, that is absolutely in the community. It's photoshopped, it doesn't exist, it was done with computers. We had watched him fabricate a miscarriage in his trial in St. George. Nothing would shock the community as far as how far someone would go to lie about it. The problem we had is in 2007, he has an open admission, and that is covered up to the community. And then we realized that he is in fact guilty of what he confessed of doing. There's the moral test for anyone. Do you continue to say the king has clothes on when he absolutely is doing things privately that is beyond anything you can describe or defend?
But how could you be that close and involved and not know what was going on? How could you not know? He walked around with his brides. We have pictures of him with his brides. You could tell people within the church that this was Photoshop, but their eyes weren't. They had to see him.
These photos, everything you're showing right there has never been seen publicly. It was never even shown to some of his top people within the church. And you need to understand that.
I do, but I'm not asking about the photos. I'm asking what you knew inside, not what you saw in photos, but what you saw walking down the street or in the car or with him. Did you and others know that he was taking child brides?
I think you're going to find out that the cases that he was charged with was not publicly known, and we were able to dispel those. And when we realized that, in fact, he was doing it, and we recognized that we did it, we didn't care, and that's what you'll find in my own track record of this. I didn't care whether Texas found him guilty or innocent.
Right.
What I said was he's morally indefensible. He has morally broken what every American should absolutely not tolerate. You can't, that's a pedophile.
There were an awful lot of young girls walking around pregnant, visibly pregnant, on the streets and the sidewalks. How did people not say, wow, that girl is young and she's pregnant?
Doctor, that sounds pretty sensational, but I'm going to call you out on that one. I had girls that were 32 years old told that they were 15 and 16 all over in Texas. And they got a driver's license, they got a birth certificate, and they took their babies away as a disputed minor. So I will just take issue with it. Unless you have enough evidence to identify them, and because they don't wear makeup, and because they are what they are, there was many people that were just shocked. They were what they were. And I've got a girl that's lost her child as a disputed 15-year-old that's 33 years old, their baby taken away from them by CPS with that allegation. I'm driving around and I just arbitrarily decide I'm going to give them the Texas eyeball test to the age and say, well, she looks underage.
So you say that there weren't pregnant teenage girls walking around in either of these communities in Texas or in Colorado City?
Doctor, that's disingenuous to say that there is no such thing. I'm just saying when people make those broad allegations without specifically getting to a deal, and you get a wholesale brush to paint an entire society, because unless you pull a case aside and judge it on the facts of the case, is it a lawful marriage? I mean, is somebody 19 years old and still a, quote, teenager, not legal to get pregnant if it's a single relationship and her husband's 19? I mean, you got to be careful with what you're branding people. Is it offensive for a 19-year-old to be pregnant in America?
Let's look at this picture right here.
That's unexcusable. Can't everyone
so
agree
tell me
that?
That's a 19-year-old. You're saying it's disingenuous for me to ask you that question. It's disingenuous for you to tell me that that is a 19-year-old girl.
Never even tried, did I?
I think you did.
No, that isn't the question, doctor. That is unexcusable.
So you want to take me to task, I'll take you to task right back, my friend. That is not something that you're going to confuse because they don't have makeup on. Was she inappropriately involved? Was he inappropriately involved with her?
Is there any dispute in America about that?
I don't think so, but you seem to be trying to fuzzy up the issue.
Oh, I better not. You better not take it to that. That is unexcusable.
That's exactly how I'm taking it. I'm asking you, so you agree that's inexcusable?
The reason the whole YFZ and the whole Texas thing was built was to keep the rest of his people that would have challenged him on this. Why do you think there's been, how many men, you've covered this, how many people in that community have been kicked out? How many of the mayors are gone? The city council members are gone. The bishops are gone. Church elders are gone. What is the moral test that gets them kicked out? It's whether they would tolerate that. Don't you get it? And if they would tolerate it, they're gone. And how many hundreds of these people, you guys call them lost boys? No, they're not. It's a lost society.
So if someone stepped up to challenge, if somebody started saying this isn't right, they're gone.
Police chiefs? Mayors? Who's the mayor right now?
Were you involved in these people being gone? Were you the guy that went and told some of them, you got to go from here, leave your home, leave your family, get out? Was that part of your job? If Warren Jeffs is still in control through his brothers, and you don't hold with what they're doing now, who authorized you to come here as spokesperson for FLDS? Were you involved in these people being gone? Were you the guy that went and told some of them, you got to go from here, leave your home, leave your family, get out? Was that part of your job?
It was. It really was.
And you did that?
I did it without the knowledge of what the reasons were.
You're saying it's obvious now.
Hindsight's great.
But it wasn't obvious then. So you would go, and I think we have to wrap our mind around, if you've truly been brought up in a society where you believe someone is a prophet and you believe that they are the last word, I totally get that. I do. I have empathy for that. But with that imprimatur, you would then go to one of these men's homes and say, you have to leave the community. You have to leave your family, leave your home, get out. So they would have a wife or wives, they would have children, they would have a life, and you would tell them they have to get out of the community. Would they resist?
The consequences of trying to stay in the community and resist, if you're a guy, it's just the same crisis at the ranch. If you resist the wrath of living in a society that doesn't take care of your children, No, usually the guy would, in order to minimize the effect on his loved ones, would walk away, not wanting to traumatize his family, which leaves the divide and conquer. This is a sick regime.
Can these young women, at whatever age that the church recognizes it, are they allowed to marry anyone they choose?
That's part of the frustration that any young girl in any society, and you see a repeat of it, wants to excel to the acceptance of the society. In other words, if you've got a society that says, in order to excel, you must be an RN, or you must be a great athlete. Well, in this society, if your status is to marry the prophet, what are you going to have? You're going to have, to be social acceptance, you've got to be a part of that, or you're not the elite, which is part of the problem.
I think you're obfuscating here. I think you're just talking around in circles. I just ask you, I just ask you if these girls can choose their own husbands. And if you know, say so, and if you don't, say you don't know. Maybe that's not maybe it's a case-by-case basis by family, or maybe it's dictated by church. I don't know. I'm gathering information here.
Well, here's what you're doing, doctor. You're asking me to take a wide brush and paint over and blur all those girls out as if it's one, without taking each girl and say, what did that particular person, how did that particular girl get in that particular relationship? And you want me to sit here and say, well, let me generalize it to you without saying, well, I know that particular girl asked, and I know that particular girl didn't ask, and I know that particular girl was pressured by her family. And so there's different circumstances. And I'm not trying to evade anything. You're trying to get me to make a broad statement that brands everyone without saying, let's take each girl and find out why is she stuck in this situation.
I'm just asking you if you know. And what you're saying is it's a case-by-case basis, so I can't tell you. We could have said that 15 minutes ago.
But there is some cases that I do, but I don't want to take hers and make it sound like hers by a general statement.
Don't make a general statement. I ask you to. If you don't know, you don't know. I mean, you're saying you can't, there's not one answer that covers them all.
But then if I do that, it appears that you take that as an evasive answer on my part, which I apologize. Having it come across that way, but you've got a lot of girls up there that are in a terrible bad situation.
What are heavenly comfort wives?
It's some perverted mating ritual of Mr. Jeff's that's gross and disgusting, and there's no excuse for it. And it's not anything that's ever been in church doctrine at all.
This is just his personal agenda.
That was his issues.
Because, he kept these journals. There's one in particular that I'd like you to respond to if you can. This was January 25th of 2004. And this is purportedly written by Warren Jeffs. It was scribed by someone, but it was said by him. There is another young girl, even younger than the Lord wants me to take. I don't know what her father will do, but I know her mother supports me. She is 13. Oh, I just want the Lord's will. I'm not seeking wives, but for some reason the Lord is having me take these young girls who can be worked with. I will have to see what her father's testimony is. At first you didn't say a name. You started saying, if the world knew what I was doing, they would hang me from the highest tree, and they would do worse than that. I get a sense in reading this that at some level in his mind, he knew this was not okay, even in the community. That if people knew this, it would not go well.
How do you respond to something like that? He knew damn good and well what he was doing, and he was covering it up, and he knew that people in his own community were the ones that were going to do that to him, Doctor.
What is your relationship with Jeffs now?
What do you mean?
You know, I've had you touch me often during these sessions. You felt it yesterday. Do you feel it again? So focused and submissive. You just say, Father, I want to witness and do and help as you direct.
What is your relationship with Jeffs now?
What do you mean?
Do you have any contact with him? Does he reach out to you? Does he?
Warren?
Yes. Are you completely estranged from him?
The last words I ever had with him was at his trial when I asked him to take the opportunity to make a confession for the sake of his people, and he requested to never come back in the courtroom. Those are the last words I've ever had with him. Take the opportunity for the sake of your people to tell them what you are. I hoped he would do it. He didn't.
You acknowledge that you did a lot of his dirty work for him at a time, like getting people to leave the community and that sort of thing, correct?
Doctor, there's no cover up to the role, and the thing that I'm telling you is there's dirty work, but then there's dirty work. It's one thing to ask somebody that they've lost standing on the church property. It's another thing when you're covering up rape of 12-year-old girls or underage girls in this case.
You're saying that, I want you to be very clear, you're saying at no time did you ever know whether you would have believed it to be okay because the prophet said it was okay or not. At no time did you ever know that kind of thing was going on.
That's correct, and the other frustration, Doctor, is because we want him to be the person that we want him to be. We all want to have Santa Claus. He's the good guy. He's the guy that can do no harm to children. So the level of burden of proof that he's actually what he's made out to be, because of what you want him to be in your own heart, you make the burden that he is huge for the government or anyone to come to me and convince him he did something bad, because I don't want to believe he did anything bad, because he's supposed to be some guy that gives me spiritual guidance for good. And so everyone can sit here and say, well, why did you follow him? Well, because we wanted, it's reasonable doubt. If you can possibly, in your distorted brain, come up with reasonable doubt that there's no facts that he did what he's accused of doing, the society did that.
Well,
looking at myself.
What turned the light on for you? Because you're saying at some point you said, whoa, this guy is not okay. What turned the light on for you?
Well, you have to go back to start seeing a series of things that started throwing a flag. First of all, we listened to an audio tape, right, in the trial, with him sexually assaulting the girl. The court ruled.
I want the audience to hear that tape now in case they haven't, so they know what you're talking about, because that had to be a huge wake-up call back. You heard it first in 07?
I was aware of it in 07, never heard it.
There's hours of it. This is a portion of it. Let's hear that, and then we'll let you talk about it.
You know, I've had you touch me often during these sessions. You felt it yesterday. Do you feel it again? So focused and submissive. You just say, Father, I want to witness and do and help as you direct. You have learned that in seeking to help me, you have received more excitement and pleasure, sexually and physically, and you felt the fire of the Spirit of God. No experience you're going through is to be disrobed in front of each other, even witness each other in sexual excitement to assist me. You must perfect that here, as you may witness it, and even help a wife be excited to excite me, or help me be excited toward her, or you assist.
Well, that's disturbing, obviously. I get it. It was very disturbing at trial, and I want to be clear, you heard this particular passage for the first time in this trial, not in 07.
Correct.
And you were just saying something that you want to make clear, and I want you to have it clear. That is that before the verdict came in, before any of this got to the public, you went on the record publicly and said this is morally corrupt and indefensible.
I stated it publicly then, and I do now. I cannot think of a person that I associate in my community that could possibly condone
But that
this.
tape was with somebody's daughter. Where were her parents?
Well, that's the ironic part is removed from the church of all things.
And
kicked out.
And
Daddy's gone. He's been one of the men maybe that was asked away from the church.
By you?
I don't.
Perhaps. You don't know.
I don't know, but the point being is there was a lot of that going on because that was one of the things that qualified. We had no idea that that was the factor. The factor of qualifications of being removed, a lot of it was on whether you had an ability to tolerate immoral conduct by him. There's very, very few that their fathers or mothers were not excommunicated, which led an absolute fiasco that we're now trying to cope with.
So there was no one there to protect the child. Their parents were gone.
That was what broke me. Your question was what broke me.
Who is in charge now?
Of the deal? Warren is.
Still
By
he-
proxy of his brothers.
Do you communicate with his brothers?
Not since they've made a stand to cover it up.
So you think they'll continue right along the same way if they're allowed to be in control?
Not only are they allowed, they've been in control, and come on. This evidence has been out for months and months and months internally. It ain't like, I mean, yeah, the courtroom is where it comes to light, but you don't think that that's the moral test that everyone's got to pass in the higher up of the church is do you change, and first of all, are you honest enough to accept the crisis? Second of all, are you willing to change to fix an all-out breakdown of an entire democracy, a society that allowed this to happen? It's huge.
If they're in control, if Warren Jeffs is still in control through his brothers, to whom I guess he's given his proxy and has communication, and you don't hold with what they're doing now, who authorized you to come here as spokesperson for FLDS?
I always believe that the values I represent is for the people, not for a pervert.
Is there anything you want to say that you haven't said so far?
I was a part of a regime that hurt people really, really bad. And I live with it every day.
Is there anything you want to say that you haven't said so far?
There is, Doctor, and that is I believed from my infancy that there was this great man that led a church. And without even knowing him beyond just the public facade of him, I was a part of a regime that hurt people really, really bad. And I live with it every day. I wasn't aware of the level of evil of the person, but I'm aware every day of the outcome of the destruction of people's lives. That I, being a part of that regime, facilitated some terrible pain that has shed thousands of tears, buckets of tears of innocent people. I don't know how to fix it, but I certainly am terribly, terribly sorry for the suffering that people have gone through, particularly for anything that I did, believing I was doing what was right, not knowing the terrible man behind the curtain. It's a tragedy, and it's a personal tragedy, not y'all's, it's mine. It's something that you live with every day in a situation that is terribly painful and very regretful and very sorry for.
I'm glad to hear you say that, and I'm glad you took the opportunity to say it. There are some other people here in the balance of this show that I'm going to talk to and interview. Some people that have been in the church, some that were part of the trial, and I'm going to be talking to them. It'll either be in this show or the next one. I would like you to participate in that, but it's totally up to you. I'm not going to ambush you with people. I ask you to come here, sit down with me. We've done that, but I'm going to bring these folks, and we're going to have a conversation about some things. And I would like to invite you to stay and be part of that if you would like to.
Be glad to.
We've got 4 or 5 people here, and I think some you don't know, some you do. One of them has written the book, Sam Brower. He is here. There's a young girl that left the church many years ago, some people like that. If you're comfortable, I'd like for you to stay. And
that's fine.
We'll do that. We'll be right back. Well, I want to thank Willie Jessop for being here today. We didn't always see eye to eye, and I think sometimes he's like trying to sack fog. That's really hard to do. Now, Willie has agreed to join us tomorrow, along with some former members of the FLDS and private investigator Sam Brower, who's author of Prophets Pray. Here's some of what you'll see tomorrow.
Next time. A former member of Warren Jeffs' church speaks out.
Warren Jeffs molested me when I was 5. He would say, you can't say anything to anyone because if you do, you're going to burn in hell.
I believe that if the case was legit, it would have been a criminal case.
You believe that Brent's making this up and is lying?
I would just ask this respect.
Still can't answer the question. Answer the question.
I challenge seriously.
Yes or no?
What I don't want to do is sound like I'm defending Warren. What
Then stop defending. The people here feel that you're not being honest. They came here wanting to forgive you, but instead what they've gotten is belligerence, anger, and avoidance.
That's next time.
All right, for more information on today's show, go to drphil.com. Thanks for being here. So long.